On this note, we will happily introduce Scott Colabella, who will talk to us about the proper way of voting, and maybe he could add on voter fraud. Scott? He is the county clerk.
Well, good evening, everybody. I assume we have all U.S. citizens here tonight? Right? But wait a minute. Hopefully everybody's a resident of Ocean County and registered to vote in Ocean County? Oh, we got some Monmouth people. Okay, and Burlington. Well, so you're registered to vote. That's important in your New Jersey residents. So I won't give you the Ocean County quiz of how many towns are in Ocean County, and we'll do that afterwards. See what you know about Burlington County. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm not kissing up to you. If you really know me, you'll know I got a lot of Tea Party in me, and when I heard a little bit of discussion about having to be a citizen to vote, having to have English on ballots, if you serve in government, and I'm a Republican, so I'm not a Tea Party elected official, but I'm a conservative Republican elected official, and some days dealing with Trenton, who that's kind of my master, and then the federal government, you feel like banging your head against something because there's no common sense, and you look at our judges and some of the decisions that are made in court cases involving elections. We're guided by, in New Jersey, there's Title 19. And those are the statutes that govern election law in our state. And there are so many times, I don't know how many in this room remember we had a U.S. Senate election in New Jersey. I think it was 2002. And our incumbent senator, Mr. Torricelli, dropped out after the legal deadline to drop out. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you drop out after the deadline, you cannot be replaced on the ballot. Unless you're in the state of New Jersey and you have one of the most liberal Supreme Courts in the country, and they decided in their infinite wisdom that the people had to have a choice. And some of the county clerks argued in court they do have a choice. Senator Torricelli, he just didn't want to run, but he was the candidate. And they allowed him to be replaced, and as an election official, we had to abide by the law, reprint ballots, and so I just cite that as an example of something that we go through every day. But no recourse to that? Well, not from my standpoint of where I worked. I wasn't the county clerk, and even if I was, there wasn't that. I mean, it could have been appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, but I was not a party to that litigation. I assure you, I didn't agree with that decision. But I thought, for the purposes of tonight, one of the main topics was we're concerned about voter fraud. And it is a very, very confusing process, but I thought I would try and spend a few moments for an Ocean County's sake, and in any county in New Jersey, there's a county clerk, and then there are these entities called boards of elections. And we both have distinct responsibilities, and I think it's helpful to just go over quickly, if I can, some of the different distinguished duties. You all should get a sample ballot before every election to give you an idea of what's in the voting machine that you're going to vote for. And it's the responsibility of the county clerk to design that, follow the statute in how he's designing it, lay it out, get it printed. There used to be called, when people could not get to the polls on election day, they had to have a reason to vote, and it was called absentee voting. You had students that went to California but are residents of New Jersey, registered to vote, but they couldn't go to the polls on election day. That was a reason. You had someone that unfortunately was ill, taken to the hospital, they couldn't get to the polls on election day, and another reason. Well, another new law that passed several years ago created a vote by mail ballot. And the county clerk is responsible for receiving these applications in the mail. And I'll go over a little more detail on that, but that's another responsibility of the county clerk. We receive these applications. I'll go through the process that we look for to dissuade fraud when we get that, and we issue people paper ballots to vote who aren't going to vote on election day. The machines that you go in to vote on, the faces that appear, our office is responsible for getting those printed and the design of that. The ballots that are used at the polling place in case the machine breaks down, referred to as emergency ballots, our office is responsible for that. There's another new thing that came along, and by the way, P.S., a lot of these new bills that have passed, whether it's federal or state, were a result of Florida in 2000. In my opinion, a lot of the things that they've done to quote-unquote correct instances of problems in voting have made it even worse and not better. But that's my opinion. They've passed. My role is to fulfill the law. We certify the results of the elections. There are campaign finance reports that candidates are required to file for how much they raise and how much they spend. And copies of those reports are to be filed, and we keep those on record in our office. To get on the ballot, you need to turn in petitions, and our office is involved in that process. And anyone that holds public office in New Jersey is required to fill out a financial disclosure report to show if they earn money outside of the salary that they earn from the taxpayers for the job that they hold. So those are the main things that the county clerk does. I want to just go on what the Board of Elections does, and then I want to go back to my office and spend a little more detail on this issue about fraud. The Board of Elections handles voter registration. We have absolutely nothing to do with that, other than we have applications at our office. You can pick them up. But we do not enter them into the computer. We do not determine the eligibility of voters. We do absentee or mail-in ballots once the person's registered. But when I was listening to the conversation, and I did bring some of these New Jersey voter registration applications, which, by the way, you'll be interested to know, are printed in Spanish as well. Okay, in any event, question number 2, when you go to fill out your voter registration application, are you a United States citizen, yes or no? If no, do not complete this form. So there you have it right there. Thank goodness that's there. Back to just trying to get this broad stroke of what each office does. The Board of Elections does voter registration. That means once you've registered with them, you can register at motor vehicle offices, but they go through your county voter registration thing. One thing that was done after the 2000 election is every state was required, this is federal legislation now, to create a statewide voter registration system. What was done in the past in New Jersey anyway, that's what I can speak to, is each county had their own computer database and registered voters. But guess what? Okay. I have a shore home in Seaside Heights, but I live up in Patterson. I don't. I'm using Joe Smith as an example. There was no way, literally, that we could tell in Ocean County if Joe Smith voted in Patterson or he voted in Lavalette. Okay, now with this statewide voter registration system, for our office's perspective, if Joe Smith comes in and he says, oh, I want to vote mail-in ballot in this November's election, first thing we do is we go on to the statewide voter registration system. We say, oh, Joe Smith is registered in Passaic County. Guess what? We issue what's called a rejection letter. You're already registered, and we print out the form to show him visible evidence that he did indeed register in Passaic County, and you cannot vote in the same election twice from 2 different places. So a good thing that has occurred on the basis of that. Let's see, poll worker training. When you all go into the polling place, you're usually greeted by someone sitting at a table with books in front of them, and depending on what polling place you're in, you might be asked for identification, you may not. I think that speaks to Chris Connor's bill and what you were talking about earlier. Again, we'll go back to each point and spend more detail. I'm still just trying to show the different breakdown of responsibilities, but the Board of Elections is responsible for hiring all the poll workers. Does anybody have any idea how many registered voters we have in Ocean County? Take a guess. What would you think? You're very close. 367,000. The population is about 600,000. We have 367 registered voters. That will go up next year because everybody in the world will want to vote for president. This cycle happens to be one of the lowest turnouts, unfortunately. Everybody like you good people, you know, if we would take some interest, we wouldn't have the government we have today. But okay, get off the soapbox. And then the breakdown is, of those 367,000 registered voters, 75,000 are registered as Democrats, 104,000 Republicans, and 188,000, the biggest number, are unaffiliated. They're not with either party. Okay, back to the Board of Election responsibilities. Poll workers, I went over that. The books that you see at the polling places where your name and address are in and your voter registration, those are maintained by the Board of Elections. A lot of people, depending on the turnout in an election, will go before a judge on election day because they want to vote, but they can't. They went to their polling place and they can't find their name in the book. So they go to Toms River, which happens to be the county seat, and there are assistant attorney generals from the state of New Jersey who are on call as well as judges. Because remember, it's a holiday. Not for me it isn't, but it's a holiday for most government workers. And they go before a judge and they plead their case. And depending on what the judge decides, they come to our office and we issue them a paper ballot. Sometimes they have figured out they are correct and they are allowed to vote at the polls. But there's something called a provisional ballot now, which is a paper ballot of what's in the voting machine. Those people cast that ballot. They are kept aside. When the Board of Canvassers meets after the election is over, there are 4 commissioners in Ocean County that are part of the Board of Elections. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. They meet and determine whether that ballot is cast or not. Again, I'll go into more detail. It's another Board of Election responsibility.